Oftentimes when we talk about global opportunities and mere size, of course we talk about China quite a bit. But something we also need to consider is India as actually a great place full of opportunities, but at the same time challenges as well. And in fact, I believe in just a few years now, India will have a larger population than China. So now I want to welcome to the stage the moderator for this panel, Mr. Naveen Bisht, the co-founder of Auris Technologies, and he will introduce the panelists in this upcoming. All right, thank you. Great. Thank you.
All right, let's have all the panelists here. So it looks like this is the last session of the day, and I'm sure all of you are ready to go have a drink and party, so we'll dive into the questions right away for the India market opportunities. Before that, let me ask, how many of you are entrepreneurs in the audience? Okay, and how many of you are looking to go into India market? Few. Okay, we'll make sure by the end of the panel you would want to go there. So let's get started with our panelists to introduce themselves very briefly. How about you, Shrikant?
Hi, I'm Shrikant. I'm the CEO, co-founder and CEO of Vidopia. We are the largest video advertising network in the India market, and as well as the largest mobile video advertising network in the US. We started off a few years ago, 2008 March, with the online India piece. And since then, we expanded out into the US in 2009, and we introduced several new technologies to enable video advertising possible on mobile.
Hi, my name is Vijay Shekhar. I'm founder and CEO of 197, and it's a very large or largest telecom app platform in the country. We have every month more than 450 monthly active users on our services, and that makes us by far biggest interactive platform in the country, and so on.
Hi, I'm Manu Rekhi. I'm a venture capitalist. We're a cross-border firm called Inventus Capital Partners. So half our portfolio companies are in the US, the other half are in India. And we typically invest in companies with Indian origin or Indian markets. My prior experience, I ran Gmail and Google at Google, along with Calendar and a bunch of other products. So mostly in the product and engineering space, and been very sort of bullish on India and growth and investing in a bunch of startups in India.
Hi, my name is Sanjay Dhawan. I am CEO of Symphony Teleca. We are a private company, a global private company with offices and operations in about 15 plus countries, 6,000 plus developers, all focused on building mobile platforms, all aspects of mobile systems. We're a product engineering services company, and with almost half of our R&D out of India, but also out of China, out of Russia, and many other countries.
Hi, my name is Raju Reddy, and I'm the former founder and CEO of Sierra Atlantic, a IT services company that was bought by Hitachi beginning of last year. So now I serve on the board of Hitachi Consulting, and also I'm a strategic advisor to the chairman of Hitachi Asia. And I also spend a lot of time working with entrepreneurs and doing angel investments in India. So there are a couple of companies, Redbus, which is India's largest bus ticketing company, and a company called Garpay that are also operating actively in the mobile space. So.
Jishnu Bhattacharjee, Nexus Venture Partners. We are an early stage focused venture capital firm investing in US and India, and we manage $600 million. And we focus on opportunities to partner with exceptional entrepreneurs looking to build category-leading companies like Shrikant. Looking forward to an engaging conversation on the panel. Thanks.
Okay. My name is Naveen Bisht. I am co-founder of Auris Technologies. It's a mobile product development and services company with offices here and in Coimbatore, India, as well as I am chairman for the programs at Thai Silicon Valley, which is a nonprofit organization focused on fostering entrepreneurship globally with over 16 countries and across 60 chapters. So with that, as you all know, India has emerged as the second fastest growing mobile market in the world after China, with a rapidly growing economy, a large youth population, and access to cheaper handsets and faster data. So as of August, recently, there are over 908 million wireless subscribers, as compared to 31 million wireline subscribers and about 14.9 million broadband subscribers. And out of this, there are about 575 million wireless subscribers which are in urban areas, and about 333 million in rural areas. So obviously, mobile has won hands down. So with this context in mind, I would like to ask our diverse group of highly experienced and amazing panel here, how do they see opportunities? So I'll start with our VCs in the panel. How do they, as cross-border investors in India, in companies here and in India, taking advantage of markets in both sides or globally, how do you, and what kind of opportunities are you seeing, and how do you evaluate those opportunities? So how about you, Jishnu, we start with?
Sure. Just to start with, I will provide a couple of examples. I think examples are the best ways to explain what we do. But in general, we follow entrepreneur-first principle. So we work with the team. Team matters extremely to us in terms of not only the passion, but shared camaraderie, the competent and complementary team members, and addressing a big unserved need. So towards that, and the way we see that, it's not necessarily like companies. There are actually a lot of companies, thankfully, originating out of India who are selling not only in India, but quickly assuming leadership positions globally. Other than Vidopia, whom you are hearing here, there are several companies. There was a company called Gluster, which originated totally out of Bangalore, and they built an enterprise-grade product which was sold globally throughout, and last year, Red Hat acquired them. And similarly, there are companies out of US, like Cloud.com, where we were also an early investor. When within 2 years, actually, they decided to sell. I don't know why, but Citrix picked them up, and when they sold, their biggest customer was Tata Communications out of India. So we are seeing a lot of product-focused companies originating out of India, which are assuming global leadership positions.
Absolutely. So I think I resonate what Jishnu just said. We're very bullish on India. If you just back 12 years ago, there was less than 1 million mobile subscribers in India. There's over 500 million now, right? So I think there's a huge amount of upside across not just mobile, but across all sectors in India. So we're bullish, and that's why our fund actually works on both sides. Just to give you a couple examples as well, just to see the scale and also things that are very unique to India and also things that are global and matter. There's a company called Redbus where Raju is also on the board member as well. We're investors. They grew to almost 90 million revenue run rate in USD, and they're actually growing at over 2.5x year over year. So that company is doing phenomenally well. It's very India focused, India originated. And then you have companies, we have a company called Vivo that got acquired by Polycom, and they solved a video collaboration technology that WebEx and Microsoft haven't been able to solve in almost 2 decades, right? So you have all the R&D being done out of India. The team was able to sell to global multinational companies all around. And then I think you see a lot of the combination of talent that had left India 20, 30 years ago have come back or have started companies in the US and have had leveraged talent in India. So we see this sort of bi-border being able to go back and forth very effective, right? I mean, I see entrepreneurs here in Silicon Valley that before they open up an office in New York are actually opening up an office in Bangalore. And I think this trend is just going to continue to grow over time.
Okay. So with that, let me ask Sanjay, with your experience in running large global enterprise services company, how do you see the role of mobile devices for enterprises in India?
The use of mobile devices in the enterprises is growing worldwide, all over the place. But when we look at some of the emerging markets like India, like China, I think in many of these places, the mobile platform is the only computing platform that many of the users, in fact, carry. So it's, they're actually skipping a generation of platforms, that many Western countries, where the users would have, different types of, computing platforms, including, normal computers, whether it's, desktop computers, laptop computers, and so on and so forth, and have, mobile platforms. In many of these emerging countries, the computing platform of choice and the only computing platform becomes a mobile platform. So what that basically means is that, many, when we work with many of our customers, designing applications, designing the back-end server architectures, how to run those applications, and so on and so forth, it becomes a different architecture. To bring that into the enterprises, bring that to many users, because suddenly the backend that you're designing is for a computing platform which is mobile and mobile only. Can come and go, and at times has certain limitations of jitter, of other technology constraints, and so on and so forth. And with that brings in new opportunities also for innovation in terms of UI UX innovation, in terms of the application persistent innovation, in terms of how to make sure that these apps are alive and generating whatever they are supposed to do, internally facing apps or externally facing apps.
Okay. All right. Raju, would you like to highlight from some of your experiences?
Yeah. When you think about the mobile market in India, there's a very interesting book called The Elephant, the Tiger, and the Cell Phone. Kind of a curious title, written by a member of parliament in India, Shashi Tharoor, who was also an undersecretary to the United Nations before. But I think it really captures the essence of what's happening in the mobile market in India. So in that, what he argues is India for a long time had been sort of this lumbering, slow-moving economy, much like an elephant, right? And so somewhere over the last 10 years, essentially with the advent of the cell phone, that really became an instrument of empowerment for so much of the poor in India and people in the rural India, not necessarily poor. And then, this elephant slowly started developing stripes and turned into a tiger, essentially. I mean, really, India has been one of the highest growth rate economies in the world for the last 10 years. I mean, even this year, granted, the tiger is a little bit wounded right now, for the last year and a half. But still, it's a pretty, fast-growing economy. So I guess what that really means when you think about the mobile opportunities, there is a lot of opportunity even at the bottom of the pyramid. I mean, there are farmers out there. The cell phones are used, and I'm sure my colleagues here, Vijay and Srikanth, would know much more about it. Building apps for the market there. But farmers have applications that they can use, primarily built on SMS infrastructure, right? That they can find out where the market prices are, whether there's a market for their goods and things like that. Something that was just unthinkable in the past. Or, like fishermen, before they come back to the coast, wherever, they can, find out where across the coast, which town may have the best, market for them. So think along those lines. So it's not necessarily, of course, when you look at the video games that run on the smartphones, of course, India doesn't show up in the, I was sitting in the earlier, panel discussion, just in the audience and watching that. Yeah, it doesn't show up in the top 20 because the number of smartphones is still very small. It's what, under 50 million today? I mean, that's growing rapidly, but just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Raju. So as you know, in emerging markets, obviously we get, we always think of them as huge opportunities, trillions of dollars, etc. But at the same time, they are a huge challenge for startups. Even I had my own experience as a startup, trying to, in fact, at that time, we were trying to go into China for a startup from here. So now we have two startup entrepreneurs over here who have been successful in India markets. I would like to hear how were they able to succeed in India market for, being startup companies started just most recently?
Well, first of all, Indian market, unlike being one market, is a combination of a couple of big markets within itself, which have their own nuances. So a company like ourselves, we don't think India is one country or one market. We look at it like a European Union, simple, separated countries within itself, and they have their own native flavors of language to the cultures and so on and so forth. So it's a very different way to look at India. Unlike in China, you could just look at 2 languages and you're done with it. In India, you have to look at 23 languages. And bottom of pyramid, or let's say, as soon as you go to mainstream in India, you don't assume English as a primary language, which puts us into another opportunity of which many international companies when lending in India do not take care of, that they don't serve the Indians in the Indian language and so on. So our opportunity has been by localizing significant amount of products and incidentally made them bottom up. We just heard about a classic example of how farmers use it. We built a social network of farmers on a voice platform where a villager was defined as a leader who could record content which was very native to that village. And then that content, once recorded, was immediately being distributed in that village, in that local accent, local relevance, and any commercial value that could have been attached. And then there were the definitions of a region on top of it and a bigger region on top of that, which allowed people to use mobile as a primary tool of even social communication, which we assume could have been done on Facebook, which is requiring data platforms. But on feature phone, we were able to emulate a great social consumer messaging application. And it built on to like a right now, India, on this application, we have a couple of million users, and that too in a deep down in a countryside. And another creativity that we were building when we were looking at solutions for the market was a freemium in India was to be developed by giving consumer free missed call. So they don't need to download an app. They need to give a missed call to a number. And then we were calling them by giving them detail of the information and learnings. And they had an option to buy after that. So the idea is that India requires us to bottom up rethink and the out-of-box thinking requirement for the country, because it's not what you have pre-built and you will be able to replicate there. It is where you have to think bottom up, think out of the box, think for the market, and then build it there. So global templates don't necessarily work there. That's why sitting in India helps us, unlike so many companies which try to get into India.
Okay, thank you. So I completely I agree with Vijay here. There's a lot of things that have to be changed for India as a market. I mean, if you think about smart mobile devices, right? The 3G penetration, it's not really there. So the technology that works over here, you take it to India, it stops working. So there's, I mean, it's really interesting that we started off in India, we fixed all the Indian problems, and you take the technology out here, it starts working automatically. And starting in India helps a lot, but primarily, I mean, trying to understand all the nuances makes us succeed. It helps us build customized solutions for the Indian market. The other part about India, and we are a B2B company, and the other part about India is customers are definitely much more nitpicky than anywhere in the world. And if you can handle them, you can handle anybody.
Okay, all right. So as you heard also from the panel, that it's still that the smartphone penetration in India is in infancy. As you heard, that there are many more feature phones, and I would say the smartphones still is about 30 to 40 million or so, some number around there. So, however, even with those feature phones, there has been a wave which has been going on, which is of value-added services, which started with ringtones, etc., and which carriers are, which is built over the carrier infrastructure or mobile infrastructure, and supposed to grow the revenue from over less than 4 billion to about 16 billion by 2016. So could panel talk about what kind of value-added services you guys are, you guys are seeing there, and how you can take advantage of that?
So we do a lot of value-added services in the market, and obviously entertainment is the lowest common denominator. You can serve everyone there. And I shared an example of how farmers were able to use a made-for-them social network, which was riding the feature phone features, calling as very common feature. Today, we've gone ahead and built on education services, and consumers are learning English is one of the very popular application that we run there. And obviously, Indians are youth who want to learn more English for better job prospects and so on. So it's very popular there. And interestingly is that one of the training institute which trains people on everyday tasks like driving, or let's say how can you do some of those not so highly skilled trainings, are also getting ported on the smartphone or feature phone platforms there. So education has gone into high tide. Learning for entrance examinations, classroom textbooks have converted themselves into those local language features. And lately I've started seeing a couple of doctors started using their appointments, calendar scheduling, reminders, and coordination doing on again on these feature phones actually. And incidentally, I want to bring out another fact here that unlike assuming that we have purely feature phone based services, Indians do build smartphone based feature services actually as a developers. The good thing about Indian engineering talent is that we are equal to or are better than many other rest of the world feature phone developers. So we understand how this application will go into a smartphone genre, and we've been able to preeminently pre-build them on smartphones also. So okay. Examples now exist in healthcare, examples now get in education, and let's see. I mean, there's a large market there.
I would like to ask Sanjay, do you see any value-added service for the enterprises based on some of the clients you work with over there?
You know, I won't answer about the enterprises on this one. I'll answer it in a more lighter note.
Okay.
You know, India, those of us, you know, who know the country very well, born there, you know, grew up there and so on and so forth, you know, India is known for three things: Bollywood, cricket, and religion. So any apps, you know, which brings, you know, these three things together will absolutely be very, very successful as a vast service in the country. On the enterprise side, I think, you know, generally, depending upon the nature of the enterprise, you know, what we are basically seeing in the market is more customer-facing applications initially take off. In Western countries, the mobility apps are facing both ways, both internally facing and externally facing, or revenue generating, and internally facing for productivity improvement. In India, most of the traction is more on the Indian customers that we are working with are more revenue generating side.
Okay, great, thank you. Jishnu, would you like to talk about any opportunity in the value-added services investments you have looked at recently or made investments in?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, one comment I would like to make, you know, all these days in India, value-added services have mostly been about voice and SMS. I do see things picking up big time in data. Of course, you know, today if you look at data usage are increasing. I mean, 3G penetration is still far from what it should be. But the positive news is that, you know, that's picking up. If you look at video consumption over mobile, for many people, mobile is actually the only screen, not even fast, forget about fast or second screen. So that's giving a lot of opportunities. So video might be the starting point, but also, you know, given smartphones are, it's true that smartphones are less, but in certain statistics I saw, you know, it's the per month addition of Android phones in the market is somewhere about 2 million or so. So clearly, you know, you fast forward a couple of years, you know, you get a very sizable user base. And the other point, you know, I would like to emphasize a little bit, which Srikant started, is like you pick up the opportunities which are there in India in the constrained environment. You talk about like, you know, maybe bandwidth is less. You know, you can't spend that much in storage. So there are a lot of things which you monitor and start building products on, which probably in countries like US or Korea, you won't even think of. Now, what is happening is that once they do that and start selling in the country, it's amazing how traction starts happening from outside the country. So there is a company called Dhruva Software. They started out of a small city, relatively smaller city in India called Pune. And they started it, they built a fantastic bandwidth efficient backup service. That's how they started. And now they expanded into other things. But they built the product, they started selling in the country, and very soon, without them even understanding, they started selling in 26 countries. And now 80% of the market is outside India. And the CEO has also moved to Silicon Valley. So there are myriads of opportunities. Sometimes, you know, opportunities just open up. I mean, this kind of phenomena we are seeing in several of our portfolio companies, and we are telling that reverse innovation. You know, previously there was a time when India would be thought of as just a services hub. It would be thought of as something like a back office being generated where, you know, folks are starting companies here, and then India is seen as an afterthought. That myth is getting debunked big time. And that's the opportunity I think you guys in the audience should look to capitalize. Thanks.
Actually, that's a great point you made. Even there is another company a lot of you might know in Mobi. I think initially started in India with focusing only on an India market, and now they are global. Actually, most of their revenues come from there. And if I recall, 6 months ago or so, SoftBank invested over 100 million into that company.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, though InMobi is not our portfolio company, I mean, I think very highly of Naveen Tiwari. So the reason I want to point it out, he started the entire company started out of India. It's run out of India. 90% of the employees are there, all the executives are there, but probably hardly 3 to 5% of the revenues are from India. And he has done it very, very successfully to build a globally leading company out of India.
So
Okay.
we had one interesting app made once Apple launched iPhone for as with Siri. So our Bangalore office built Android equivalent called Iris out of it, and which quickly downloaded like tens of millions of downloads happened of that within a week's time period. And so assuming that sitting here in India, we would build services just for Indians, we were able to bring out something which was very popular in the rest of the world. And it became like a defining moment for Android users because Siri was not available, obviously, on Android platform in those days. So that was another case out of Bangalore office of ours.
Great. I think, Raju, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of shed light on this from a very different perspective. Not so much about what actually runs in the mobile phones, but if you think about it, India is a very unique market, right? It's got 900 million cell phones out there, and think of all the infrastructure that goes into supporting that. For instance, the telecom towers. This is something that I'm particularly familiar with from Hitachi right now. Hitachi has a big initiative. Primarily, they're focused on what they call social innovation. To them, that is power, water, and transportation. But those are the three areas that they believe they can and they will lead the markets over time, right? So powering these telecom towers, there are roughly about 500,000 of these telecom towers in India. So in other words, this is more like selling tools to the gold diggers, if you will, right? So there is all this infrastructure of the 900 million cell phones, telecom towers, and the equipment that goes into it. And there are also some young entrepreneurs right now in India who are developing this sort of renewable energy units that power these telecom towers. So the opportunities can come from different angles. It's something to keep in mind for the entrepreneurs and the investors here.
Okay. All right. So moving on to our next, one of the biggest, I guess, important holy grail of this whole value-added service is mobile commerce, which is, again, a service running over the mobile infrastructure. So I wanted to bring out an interesting point. There are about 908 million wireless subscribers, as I mentioned earlier, and there are about 250 million bank accounts in the country. That means a large chunk of India's population is unbanked, with over half even lacking access to a simple savings account. So that brings a very interesting point. If you look at from opportunities perspective, that means this disparity in banking coverage and mobile infrastructure, it could provide mobile phone a crucial transformational role. Like things like, for example, there is a very successful example in Kenya of M-Pesa, which has been very successful over mobile infrastructure in providing remittance services, does over 300 or 400 million in revenue in a small country. So, and even in India, there are certain services more on information or infotainment services. So how do you see this whole m-commerce opportunity in India? Number one is what kind of infrastructure and support is required in order for it to fully realize its potential and the challenges, if you could talk about it. Yes, go ahead, Manu.
Yeah. So we're very bullish on m-commerce in India and just the banking and mobile banking. And just to give you an example of M-Pesa, I think what it requires in India is actually a killer application that gets people to actually start transacting, right? So if you take the example of Kenya, M-Pesa, which is actually owned by Vodafone, the killer app was actually gambling, right? People, so it's one thing to actually open up a bank account and there's a utility, but the gambling piece is actually what caused people to create the accounts and actually being able to transact. And then they could build services on top of that once the money was in a bank account. So in India, for example, I think a big push could be all the millions of government workers and people that the government pays money to. If you could actually convert that from paying cash or checks to getting that money into the mobile phones, you can actually power people's cell phones dramatically, right? And a good example of this was the U.S. government did this in Afghanistan, where they converted from, instead of paying contractors through cash to having to pay through their cell phones. All of a sudden, 30% of corruption that happened with cash transactions went away, right? So I think there's a huge amounts of opportunity in terms of having the government sort of seed the problem. And then companies, our startup companies can actually take over as well. Also, the government did a very interesting thing recently. They started a UID project, which sort of gives every citizen in India sort of an ID. And that allows you to be able to then have that identification to be able to then do m-commerce and mobile payments as well. So we're pretty bullish. I think it's going to take a few years for this to materialize. But this is going to happen because the ATMs can't. You think of your cell phone as an ATM that's extended to your handset, and I don't have to have ATMs all over the countryside to be able to transact.
That's great. Vijay, there are still problems with this whole e-commerce, and you've been into thick and thin of it, like in terms of even respect to such as basic shipping and tracking being not in place, not even being able to locate the proper addresses, and fundamental problem with ethics and customer satisfaction. So how do you think, how do you envision these challenges could be overcome and can come to the level of Amazon and all, other companies here who pride in giving the best customer satisfaction to the end user?
I think the good opportunity for Indians is, and as India I love about, is that we will jump ahead of retail revolution of what happened in US, which was so much of big box stores here. They're necessarily not needed there, which is exactly how China panned out. There are vertical specific players which played out like Wankel and so on, and India has many of those happening as we speak. Now, big infrastructural issues, including payments and logistics, remain. And incidentally, they don't remain as issues. I think these are the tremendous entrepreneurial opportunities. One of the company that our company has invested is called Chotu, and this is a slang name for a guy who does errands work for you. This guy does last mile logistics of e-commerce companies. So big e-commerce companies which rely on, let's say, big courier companies want to bring efficiency in their cost structure, use our Chotu, who does the last mile of logistics, which means from your shipyard in Delhi, shipping center in Delhi, it'll go to the consumer. This guy will take care of it. Now, this guy has been able to do it only for e-commerce. He's made it for e-commerce and m-commerce companies, which means that he has every other fancy thing of tracking, where is it, and so on, taken care even at a startup stage versus only big Blue Dart or FedEx would have done it, let's say, in the country. So services like these are great entrepreneurial opportunities. We've done internally, we've incubated, and we now love the opportunity. We call it PayTM. It's called Pay Through Mobile. And the intention is clearly what we were discussing about, requirement of wallet, which will allow consumers to pay for all these services. And not just wallet. We in India will bring escrow payment by the day one. We will include opportunities of you could be sure of merchant ratings when you're paying through our wallet and so on. So India is like a vast opportunity right now. Penetrations which are happening on mobile internet are giving these opportunities big and bigger there.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
A quick comment I would like to add what Vijay said is like, if you look at e-commerce, actually the points that you mentioned, the ethics issues, customer service, those are actually largely being addressed in a big way. And in fact, to some extent, I would say even better than the service that's being offered in US by some select companies. It's like amazing. And interesting to note is that, last decade, there has been a lot of efforts from big companies saying that they would do e-commerce. Nothing picked up because they really didn't breathe in the culture of what really e-commerce means. It's not just setting up a product store, but valuing customer service, doing logistics, doing merchandising and sourcing. So that actually, several companies like Flipkart, companies like Snapdeal, companies like Yebi, they are doing an amazing job there. Of course, it's a starting point, and there are like a lot of things that you have to keep in mind. India is still by and large a cash economy. Most of the e-commerce transactions, if I look at, probably 50% of them happens by a mechanism called cash on delivery, where you deliver the stuff and then the cash is paid. So there are different nuances that you have to adapt to, but as a whole, this sector is increasing, and I think e-commerce would be kind of the trendsetter, after which m-commerce would come in, and of course government has to play their role. There are a lot of things that needs to be put in place, but overall huge opportunity.
Anyone else wants to take a crack at it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say at least a while, some time ago, almost about 60% of all the internet transactions, commerce was related to travel. And Redbus, they introduced this largest online bus ticketing company in India. They introduced the M-Ticket. They were the first ones to introduce that, about roughly a year and a half ago. And the Indian Railways and others also started. What they found was, interestingly, the customers who buy on the mobile, I mean, these are customers typically that peak sometime late in the night, like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Whereas the other customers normally that peaks at 11, 12 in the morning. So you're almost like reaching a different set of customers. And so that's something, worth keeping in mind for those of you who are targeting the mobile market.
Okay, great. So moving on to the next topic is mobile advertising. And of course, Vidopia has been very heavily involved in that. So what, just getting to the, still there are about, just a stat, 12 million small, medium enterprises, but there are about only 150,000 who advertise in any medium. So how do you get to these 12 million to drive their revenues for their business? And in terms of mobile advertising, what are the biggest areas of growth? Is it messaging? Is it search? Is it mobile internet apps, which is still in infancy?
Right. So, I mean, if you look back like 5, 6 years, the primary mode of advertising used to be a text message advertising. That is changing really fast, and of course, the smartphone penetration is resulting in that. I cannot answer the small and medium enterprise question really, because Vidopia is a service primarily for brand advertising, and in order to do brand advertising, I mean, we think of it as two parts. One is relevance, and the second part of this advertising would be influence. So you show relevant ads to influence. You show influential ads to relevant people, and for that you tend to need a large set of audience where you can nitpick and slice and dice the audience into exactly what the brand needs. For instance, if you're looking at a P&G or a HUL campaign, or a shampoo campaign, they like to get to a women audience within certain age group. For that, there needs to be a lot of data that needs to come in, and unfortunately, at this point in time, there is, it's because of low smartphone penetration, and if you slice down that part, you're left with a very small chunk of people. But the good part now is that because it is so small, the solution can be found, and we definitely do a lot of data collection, trying to figure out who the user is, and so on. And as the market scales, this becomes a larger than TV opportunity, and that is a huge deal for us. And that's what and we do expect mobile as an advertising medium to actually outgrow the online video piece that we have very soon.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else, like from Jishnu or Manu from investment? Have you made any other investments? I know you guys are investors in Vidopia, in any advertising-related companies focused in India market.
Yeah, no, we do. We have a couple of companies, both in ads retargeting and also ads optimization across different media, both mobile, social, search. And these companies actually, so one of the companies, Vizuri, started in Bangalore, but now they have operations in Australia, China, Europe, Brazil. So they've been able to sort of grow pretty rapidly across the globe, just like InMobi and other companies have been able to as well. And so we actually invested in companies that were actually providing the tools for e-commerce companies to be able to reach their audiences. So the technology there has been sort of outperforming retargeting technologies from other sort of Western companies as well. So we see amazing R&D, amazing product talent, and I think advertising, and also looking at advertising in India in a different sense as well. So the same formats, the same ad things that work in Europe may not as effectively work in India as well. So you have to be able to constantly tweak and learn and understand them as well. And you have to grow global very soon, because you learn quite a bit as you go from market to market. You can be able to scale and then effectively bring them back as well. So we're pretty bullish in terms of how these companies actually grow out.
All right. We are running out of time, so I have two more questions quickly. So one is, what would be your wish, instead of going into the context, but what would be your wish list to government of India for any kind of help, support that they can provide to make it easy for investors, large businesses, and startups? Sanjay, you want to take a crack at it?
My advice is going to be stay away.
Okay.
I second and third that too.
I would say, anecdotally, I would say, as they say, in China, everything happens for the government. In India, everything happens despite the government. And that's how kind of like, all the entrepreneurs are geared up and they face all the challenges. But to point out, some of the things, I think government can do a lot, especially if you talk about in mobile payments, there are, of course, a lot of regulations that can be brought in place. They recently actually did a good move. They allowed FDI in retail. That I think is a positive movement. Of course, things needs to still happen in e-commerce, but I am seeing it as kind of a first step where government can come in and provide the impetus needed for all these entrepreneurs.
Anyone else?
So I can give you a practical example here. So 15 years ago, all spectrum for telecom was actually licensed by the government and was very expensive. So there's a lot of bribe and lots of corruption. So there's almost no user penetration for mobile. And when that opened up, and was almost forced to get opened up, it allowed for mobile penetration from going from almost zero to where it is right now, almost hitting 1 billion now. Whereas, and now they've actually went back and actually deregulated, actually regulated again, where it's again going back to actually getting licenses. And now you see the decline in mobile as well, right? And also the way they do licensing in spectrum, where the spectrum bandwidth are so slow that it actually costs more, for telecom providers to actually be able to provide the data bandwidth, right? So the government policies can be very encouraging, but they can also have the opposite effect of actually turning off entrepreneurship as well.
I have one wish here, and it is driven by restriction on capital markets in India. As an Indian company, we can't go out and raise public money unless we list in India. That sort of restricts the market access to market and kind of investors that we could attract. So I think that's where I believe that government, if they are interested in foreign investment, they should allow Indian companies to go out and take those investments.
Okay.
That's
Sanjay.
just it.
The one wish list, although it's not very directly mobile related, it's more, again, around how the business is conducted in the country. I have personally been involved with taking over, buying an Indian public company, and unless government changes rules, I'll never ever do that again.
Okay, great, thank you. So the last question, we have just 1.5 minutes. So each of the panelists, I would like them to talk about one big opportunity do you see in this sector, in the mobile sector, in the next 3 years?
I would think it's mobile payments, you have already discussed a lot of things. The important part over here is that, there is a lot of different nuances that are there when it comes to India market. Just take the corruption, for example, or even ethical behavior from people in general, customers, right? And if these problems are solved, they can be solved by companies, and that's going to be a pretty big opportunity for.
Okay, just the opportunity. You don't have to give rationalization, please.
I think
so we can get everyone to go and have drinks.
I think mobile first marketplace for India is something that is big. So Taobao for India will happen on the mobile. That's, I believe.
Manu?
So I would sort of say entertainment consumption will continue to sort of be massive.
I think it's going to be around mobile m-commerce, and I was sitting here thinking that, with bank accounts being, 1/4 of the user base of mobile, has to be some barter-based system, right, that runs on mobile.
Oh, great.
Yeah, kind of. I just want to comment on this with a slightly broader.
You have 1 second.
Thing. Yes, I'll make it 10 seconds. Yeah, Hitachi for the first time in the 100-year history is going to have a board meeting in India, this December. So that is just to tell you how important India is becoming to some very large corporations. So for a segment that is reaching almost 1 billion people, I think doesn't matter what segment of it, whether it's payments or m-commerce, whatever. There are very, very few segments out there that are as attractive as the Indian mobile market, in my view.
On one category of companies I'm really looking forward to meeting entrepreneurs is who can blend mobility trends with data and all the interesting things that can be done around, whether it is applied in enterprises, whether it is applied in education or healthcare.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I was trying to beat the Indian Standard Time. Usually it's delayed by half an hour, but we almost did it. Just probably 1 minute beyond. So let's give a big round of applause to our highly accomplished panelists for sharing their insight and wisdom over here.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you.